How do we use universal quantifiers in SQL? In relational calculus, we use universal quantifiers to apply a condition to an entire group of things. For example, we might want to find the names of employees who have only female dependents. So we might write something like this. But how do we translate this into SQL? You might think we write something like this, but SQL does not support universal quantifiers. So then what do we do? Well, SQL does support existential quantifiers, so we can retrieve the information we want from the database by reformulating our universal quantifier statement into an equivalent form that uses the existential quantifier instead. To do this reformulation, we have to keep a few things in mind. First of all, saying that all x's are a's is the same thing as saying there does not exist an x that is not an a. Another thing is that universal quantifiers are often used in conjunction with conditional statements, something like if A, then B. It turns out that if A, then B is logically equivalent to not A or B. If you work out the truth tables of those two, it turns out they're the same. And finally, we need to keep in mind De Morgan's laws. We can combine these concepts to transform our universal quantifier statement into an equivalent form that involves an existential quantifier and some negations. So our universal quantifier becomes not exists, and our conditional, the left side stays the same, and the right side becomes and not that right side. So going back to our example of wanting to find employees who have only female dependents, we can transform our universal quantifier statement into an equivalent statement that involves an existential quantifier instead. From here, the translation in SQL is fairly straightforward. SQL supports the exists statement as well as negations, so we can say select the names of employees where, and then use not exists with an embedded query to express the rest of the conditions that we want. And then we'll get our employees who have only female dependents. So that's how we use universal quantifiers in SQL without using universal quantifiers in SQL.